Maya Johnson walked through the crowded hallway of Lincoln High School with quiet confidence, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her math textbook clutched against her chest. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Students rushed past her, their voices echoing off the walls as they hurried to their first period classes. She had been at Lincoln High for 3 weeks now, having transferred from her old school across town when her family moved to a new neighborhood. The adjustment hadn't been easy. Making new friends was always challenging, especially when you were naturally shy and preferred spending time reading or practicing forms in your backyard rather than hanging out at the mall. Maya paused at her locker, spinning the combination lock with practiced ease. As she organized her books for the day, she couldn't help but notice the conversations happening around her. Groups of students clustered together, laughing and sharing stories from their weekend adventures. She wondered if she would ever feel like she truly belonged here. Well, look what we have here, a voice said behind her. Maya turned around to see Derek Morrison and his crew approaching. Derek was tall for a junior, with bleached blonde hair and a permanent sneer that seemed etched into his face. He was the kind of person who commanded attention wherever he went, though not always for good reasons. His 2 friends, Jake and Tommy, flanked him on either side, their arms crossed and expressions matching their leader's hostile demeanor. Maya had heard about Derek from other students. He had a reputation for picking on anyone he considered different or weak. Teachers seemed to turn a blind eye to his behavior, perhaps because his father was a prominent businessman in town and donated generously to the school's athletic programs. "I don't think we've been properly introduced," Derek continued, stepping closer to Maya's locker. "You're the new girl, right? The one who thinks she's too good to talk to anyone?" Maya closed her locker door and faced him calmly. "I'm Maya," she said simply. "And I don't think I'm too good for anyone. I'm just getting used to being here." Derek laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Maya," he repeated mockingly. "That's a weird name. Where are you from, anyway? You don't look like you belong in this neighborhood." The hallway around them had grown quieter. Other students slowed their pace or stopped altogether, sensing the tension building. Some watched with concern, while others seemed eager to see what would happen next. Maya noticed a few students pulling out their phones, likely ready to record whatever was about to unfold. "I'm from here," Maya replied evenly. "This is my home too." "Your home?" Derek's voice rose slightly. "I don't think so. People like you should stick to your own kind of schools. This place has standards." Maya felt a familiar sensation washing over her. The same feeling she got during her training sessions, when Master Chen would test her patience with seemingly impossible challenges. Her breathing remained steady, her posture relaxed but alert. Years of discipline had taught her to control her emotions, even in the face of ignorance and hatred. "I have every right to be here," she said quietly but firmly. "Just like everyone else." Jake stepped forward, encouraged by Derek's lead. "Listen here, girl. Derek's being nice to you. Maybe you should show some appreciation and find somewhere else to hang out. This hallway belongs to us." Maya looked around at the gathered students. Most avoided eye contact, unwilling to get involved. A few looked sympathetic, but remained silent. She understood their reluctance. Standing up to someone like Derek could make you his next target. "This hallway belongs to everyone," Maya said. "I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to get to class." Derek's face darkened. "Trouble? You think you can just waltz in here and act like you own the place? Let me tell you something, princess. This school has a certain way of doing things, and newcomers need to learn their place." He reached out and knocked the textbook from Maya's hands. It hit the floor with a loud thud, its pages splaying open. Several sheets of her carefully written notes scattered across the hallway floor. Maya watched her papers drift down like leaves falling from a tree. She thought about her grandfather, who had first introduced her to the ancient traditions of Shaolin martial arts when she was just 7 years old. He had taught her that true strength came not from fighting, but from knowing when not to fight. She knelt down gracefully and began gathering her papers. Her movements were fluid and deliberate, like a dancer performing a choreographed routine. Each paper was collected with the same careful attention, regardless of how far it had traveled or how many footprints now marked its surface. Derek watched her with growing frustration. He had expected anger, tears, or defiance. Instead, he was met with an almost serene composure that seemed to deflate his aggressive energy. "What's wrong with you?" he demanded. "Are you deaf, or just stupid?" Maya stood up, her papers neatly reorganized and her textbook in hand. When she looked at Derek, her dark eyes held no anger or fear, only a kind of quiet strength that made him uncomfortable. "I'm neither," she said. "I just don't see the point in getting upset over something so small." Tommy laughed nervously. "Small? Derek just disrespected you in front of half the school? And you think it's small?" Maya shrugged slightly. "Papers can be picked up. Words can be ignored. Getting angry about it won't change anything, and it certainly won't make my day any better." Derek felt his authority slipping away. The crowd that had gathered was beginning to murmur, and he sensed that Maya's calm response was making him look foolish rather than powerful. "You think you're smart, don't you?" he snarled, acting all zen and peaceful. "Let me show you what happens to people who don't show respect around here." He raised his hand as if to strike her. But before he could complete the motion, something extraordinary happened. Maya shifted her weight, almost imperceptibly, her right foot sliding back just a few inches while her left hand moved in what appeared to be a casual gesture. To most observers, it looked like she was simply adjusting her position, but Derek found himself frozen mid-swing, his hand hovering uselessly in the air. He couldn't explain what had happened, or why his body seemed unwilling to complete the action he had intended. Maya looked at him with genuine concern. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You look like you might be feeling unwell." Derek blinked rapidly, trying to understand what had just occurred. His hand felt heavy and uncooperative, as if it belonged to someone else. He slowly lowered it to his side, confusion replacing his earlier aggression. What did you?" he stammered. "Did what?" Maya asked innocently. "I hope you're not getting sick. There's been a lot of flu going around lately." Jake and Tommy exchanged bewildered glances. They had seen their friend's hand stop in midair, but they couldn't pinpoint any specific action Maya had taken to cause it. It was as if Derek had simply lost his nerve at the crucial moment. The bell rang, signaling the start of first period. Students began dispersing toward their classrooms, the excitement of the confrontation quickly fading as academic responsibilities took precedence. Maya shouldered her backpack and looked at Derek one more time. "I really do hope you feel better," she said sincerely. "Maybe you should visit the nurse if that happens again." As she walked away toward her chemistry class, Derek remained standing by the lockers, his friends hovering uncertainly around him. His hand still felt strange, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, even though he couldn't identify what it was. Maya found her seat in the chemistry lab and unpacked her materials for the day's experiment. Her lab partner, a friendly girl named Sarah, leaned over with a concerned expression. "I saw what happened in the hallway," Sarah whispered. "Are you okay?" Derek can be really nasty to new students. Maya smiled genuinely for the first time that morning. "I'm fine. Thank you for asking." "Derek seems like he might be having a rough day." Sarah stared at her in amazement. "A rough day? He was being completely awful to you. And you're worried about him having a rough day? Everyone deserves compassion," Maya said simply. "Even people who haven't learned how to show it to others yet." As the chemistry teacher began explaining the day's lesson about molecular bonds and reactions, Maya found her mind drifting to her training sessions with Master Chen. 3 times a week, she would make the 40-minute bus ride across town to the small, unassuming building where he taught traditional Shaolin Kung Fu. Master Chen was a small, elderly man who had immigrated from China 30 years earlier. His English was accented but clear, and his understanding of martial arts was deeper than anyone Maya had ever met. He had been her teacher for 8 years now, ever since her grandfather had introduced them. Martial arts are not about fighting, Master Chen would often say during their sessions. They are about understanding yourself and your place in the world. A true martial artist seeks to avoid conflict, not create it. Maya had taken those words to heart. While other students her age were focused on learning flashy kicks and impressive techniques, she had dedicated herself to mastering the internal aspects of the art. Meditation, breathing exercises, and forms practice made up the majority of her training. The self-defense applications were taught as a last resort, something to be used only when all other options had been exhausted. She thought about the pressure point techniques Master Chen had shown her, subtle movements that could disrupt an attacker's balance or temporarily interfere with their coordination. She had used one such technique on Derek without even consciously deciding to do so. It had been pure instinct, her body responding to a threat before her mind had time to analyze the situation. The chemistry experiment required careful measurement and precise timing. Maya found the methodical process soothing, much like her forms practice. Each step built upon the previous one, and patience was essential for achieving the desired results. "You're really good at this," Sarah observed as Maya carefully added drops of indicator solution to their mixture. "Have you always been interested in science?" "I like things that have clear principles and logical outcomes," Maya replied. "Chemistry is a lot like martial arts in that way." "Martial arts?" Sarah's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You study martial arts?" Maya nodded, continuing to focus on their experiment. "For about 8 years now. My grandfather got me started, and I've been training with Master Chen ever since." "What kind of martial arts?" Sarah asked, clearly intrigued. "Traditional Shaolin Kung Fu," Maya said. "It's probably different from what most people imagine martial arts to be like." Sarah was about to ask another question when the teacher called for everyone's attention to discuss the results they were observing. Maya was grateful for the interruption. She preferred to keep her training private. Not because she was ashamed of it, but because it was something deeply personal and meaningful to her. After chemistry class, Maya made her way to her history class. The hallways were bustling again as students moved between periods. She noticed Derek and his friends near the water fountain, but they seemed to be avoiding eye contact with her. Derek was flexing his hand and examining it closely, as if trying to solve a puzzle. In history class, they were studying the civil rights movement. Maya found the material fascinating and disturbing in equal measure. The teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was passionate about the subject and encouraged lively discussion among her students. "Who can tell me about the importance of nonviolent resistance in the movement?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked. Maya raised her hand. Nonviolent resistance was based on the idea that you could fight injustice without becoming unjust yourself. Leaders like Dr. King believed that responding to hatred with more hatred would only perpetuate the cycle of violence. "Excellent point, Maya," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "Can anyone elaborate on how this philosophy was put into practice?" A student named Marcus spoke up. "They used techniques like sit-ins, peaceful marches, and boycotts. Even when they were attacked or arrested, they didn't fight back physically." "But didn't that just make them easy targets?" another student asked. "How can you defend yourself if you refuse to fight?" Maya considered the question carefully before responding. "I think there's a difference between being passive and being nonviolent. Nonviolent resistance requires incredible strength and discipline. It takes more courage to face violence without responding in kind than it does to simply hit back." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "That's a very mature observation, Maya." The civil rights leaders understood that their goal wasn't to defeat their opponents, but to change their hearts and minds. Violence might win a battle, but it rarely wins over hearts. As the class continued, Maya reflected on the parallels between the civil rights movement and her own martial arts training. Both required tremendous self-control and the wisdom to know when action was necessary and when restraint was the better choice. During lunch, Maya found a quiet corner of the cafeteria and opened her notebook. She had developed a habit of writing down thoughts and observations from her day, partly as a way to process her experiences and partly as a form of meditation. Today's entry began. Encountered hostility from Derek Morrison and his friends. Used minimal force pressure point technique instinctively. Must discuss with Master Chen whether this was appropriate response. Question. Is it possible to maintain nonviolent principles while still protecting oneself? She was interrupted by a shadow falling across her table. Looking up, she saw a girl with short auburn hair and freckles standing hesitantly nearby. "Hi," the girl said nervously. "I'm Jessica. I was wondering if I could sit with you. All the other tables are pretty full." Maya gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Of course. I'm Maya." Jessica sat down and unpacked her lunch. "I heard about what happened this morning with Derek Morrison. That took guts, standing up to him like that." "I wasn't trying to stand up to him," Maya said honestly. "I was just trying to get to class." "Well, whatever you were doing, it worked," Jessica said with admiration. "Nobody's ever made Derek back down like that before. How did you do it?" Maya chose her words carefully. "I think he just wasn't expecting me to stay calm. Sometimes when you don't react the way people want you to, it throws them off balance." Jessica nodded thoughtfully. "My mom always tells me that bullies feed off fear and anger. If you don't give them what they're looking for, they eventually lose interest." "Your mom sounds wise," Maya said. "She should be. She's a school counselor at the elementary school across town. She deals with bullying situations all the time." Jessica took a bite of her sandwich before continuing. "She says most bullies are really just scared kids who are trying to feel powerful because they feel powerless in other parts of their lives." Maya found this perspective intriguing. "Do you think that's true about Derek?" "I don't know Derek well enough to say for sure," Jessica admitted. "But I do know he's been different since his parents got divorced last year. Before that, he was just kind of arrogant and annoying. Now, he's genuinely mean." This information gave Maya a new lens through which to view the morning's encounter. Perhaps Derek's aggression wasn't really about her at all, but about his own pain and confusion. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it might explain it. The rest of the lunch period passed pleasantly. Jessica turned out to be funny and intelligent, with interests ranging from astronomy to creative writing. Maya found herself relaxing for the first time since arriving at Lincoln High, enjoying the simple pleasure of normal teenage conversation. As they walked together toward their afternoon classes, Jessica asked, "What do you like to do for fun?" "I practice martial arts," Maya said, then quickly added, "And I read a lot. I also like hiking and spending time outdoors." "Martial arts, really? That's so cool. What kind?" "Traditional Shaolin Kung Fu." "It's probably not what most people think of when they hear martial arts." "What do you mean?" Jessica asked curiously. Maya struggled to find the right words to explain. "Most people think martial arts are about fighting and breaking boards and stuff like that. But Shaolin Kung Fu is more about finding balance and understanding yourself. The physical techniques are just one small part of it." "That sounds really philosophical," Jessica said. "How did you get into it?" "My grandfather," Maya replied. "He practiced when he was younger, back in China. When I was having trouble with some kids at my old school, he thought it might help me build confidence." "Did it work?" Jessica asked. Maya considered the question as they reached the point where their paths diverged toward different classrooms. "In ways I never expected," she said finally. "But probably not in the way my grandfather originally intended." The afternoon passed uneventfully. Maya attended her English and algebra classes without incident, though she noticed Derek and his friends watching her from a distance a few times. They seemed to be having heated discussions among themselves, with Derek gesticulating animatedly while his friends listened with confused expressions. After school, Maya gathered her things from her locker and headed toward the exit. The hallways were crowded with students eager to begin their after-school activities or return home. She had arranged to take the bus across town to Master Chen's school for her regularly scheduled training session. As she pushed through the heavy front doors of the school, she heard someone calling her name. Turning around, she saw Jessica jogging to catch up with her. "Hey Maya, I wanted to ask you something," Jessica said, slightly out of breath. "Some of us are going to see a movie this weekend. Would you like to come? It's not a big group. Just 4 or 5 people." Maya felt a warm surge of gratitude. "I'd like that very much." Thank you for thinking of me. Great. I'll text you the details tonight. Oh, I'll need your number. They exchanged phone numbers, and Maya found herself smiling as she walked toward the bus stop. Perhaps Lincoln High wouldn't be as lonely as she had initially feared. The bus ride to Master Chen's school gave her time to reflect on the day's events. She pulled out her notebook and added to her earlier entry. Maid, new, friend, Jessica. Learned Derek's parents recently divorced, wondering if his aggression stems from personal pain rather than genuine malice. Must discuss with Master Chen how to maintain compassion for those who show hostility. When she arrived at the small building that housed Master Chen's school, she felt the familiar sense of peace that always came with entering this space. The walls were decorated with traditional Chinese artwork and calligraphy, and the air carried the faint scent of sandalwood incense. Master Chen was waiting for her in the main practice area, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed out the window at the small garden he maintained behind the building. "Good afternoon, Maya," he said without turning around. "How was your day at the new school?" Maya set down her backpack and changed into her practice clothes. "I encountered some hostility from another student." Master Chen turned to face her, his weathered features showing mild concern. "Tell me about this encounter." Maya described the incident with Derek in detail, including her instinctive use of the pressure point technique. Master Chen listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "You acted without thought, allowing your body to respond naturally to a perceived threat. This shows that your training has become integrated into your being. However, we must discuss whether this response was appropriate for the situation." "That's exactly what I was wondering," Maya said. "I didn't consciously decide to use that technique. It just happened." "The fact that you are questioning your actions shows wisdom," Master Chen said. "A true martial artist must constantly examine their motivations and methods. Tell me, what was your primary goal in that moment?" Maya thought carefully. "I wanted to avoid being hurt, but I also didn't want to hurt him. I suppose I was trying to de-escalate the situation." "And did your action accomplish those goals?" "I think so." He stopped his attack, but he wasn't injured, and the situation ended without anyone getting hurt. Master Chen nodded slowly. "You used minimal force to achieve maximum effect. This is consistent with our principles. However, you must also consider the broader implications of your actions." "What do you mean?" "By demonstrating your abilities, even subtly, you may have created new complications. This student and his friends now know that you are not as helpless as they initially believed. They may seek other ways to challenge you, or they may tell others about what happened." Maya hadn't considered this possibility. "So, you think I should have just let him hit me?" "Not necessarily," Master Chen said. "But you must be prepared for the consequences of your choice. In martial arts, every action creates reactions. You have set events in motion that may require further responses from you." They spent the next hour working on forms, the flowing movements helping Maya center herself and process the day's experiences. As she moved through the familiar patterns, she felt her anxiety about Derek and his friends beginning to fade, replaced by a sense of clarity and purpose. Near the end of their session, Master Chen called her over to sit with him on the small meditation mats he kept in one corner of the practice area. "I want to share a story with you," he said. "Many years ago, when I was about your age and still training in China, I encountered a group of older students who resented my presence at their school. They believed I did not belong there because I came from a poor family in the countryside." Maya settled into a comfortable position, intrigued by this rare glimpse into her teacher's past. "These students made my life very difficult," Master Chen continued. "They would hide my belongings, exclude me from group activities, and mock my accent when I spoke. I became angry and frustrated, and I began planning ways to use my martial arts training to get revenge." "What happened?" Maya asked. "My teacher discovered my intentions. Instead of punishing me, he gave me a special assignment. He told me I had to find one thing about each of those students that I could genuinely admire or respect. I thought he was crazy." "That must have been really hard," Maya said. "It was one of the most difficult tasks I had ever been given," Master Chen agreed. But as I began to observe these students more carefully, I started to see past their hostile behavior. One was struggling to care for a sick grandmother while maintaining his studies. Another was terrified that he wasn't smart enough to succeed and was lashing out from his own insecurity. A third had recently lost his father and was angry at the whole world. "Did this change how they treated you?" Maya asked. "Not immediately," Master Chen said. "But it changed how I treated them. Instead of responding to their hostility with more hostility, I began to respond with understanding. When one of them was having trouble with a particularly difficult form, I offered to help him practice. When another seemed sad, I would sit with him in silence. And that made them stop bullying you?" "Eventually, yes. But more importantly, it taught me something crucial about the nature of conflict. Most aggression comes from pain or fear. When you respond to someone's pain with compassion instead of anger, you have the power to break the cycle of violence." Maya absorbed this story in silence for several minutes. Finally, she spoke. "Are you saying I should try to help Derek instead of avoiding him?" "I am saying you should try to understand him," Master Chen replied. "Understanding does not mean you have to tolerate abuse or put yourself in danger. But it might help you find more skillful ways to respond to future encounters." As Maya rode the bus home that evening, she found herself thinking about Derek Morrison in a completely different light. Instead of seeing him as a threat or an obstacle, she began to wonder what pain or fear might be driving his aggressive behavior. The revelation about his parents' divorce suddenly seemed much more significant. She thought about her own family and how secure and supported she felt at home. Her parents had always encouraged her interests and celebrated her achievements. They had never doubted her ability to handle the challenges of a new school, and they had provided her with the resources she needed to pursue her martial arts training. What would it feel like to have that foundation suddenly pulled away? To watch your parents, the two people who were supposed to provide stability and security, tear apart the very structure of your life. Maya began to understand how such an experience might leave someone feeling powerless and desperate to regain control in whatever way possible. By the time she reached her stop, Maya had made a decision. She wouldn't seek out confrontation with Derek, but she also wouldn't go out of her way to avoid him. If another encounter occurred, she would try to respond with the same compassion Master Chen had shown to his tormentors years ago in China. The next morning, Maya approached Lincoln High with a sense of calm determination. She had spent part of the evening researching conflict resolution techniques and had practiced several de-escalation strategies in front of her bedroom mirror. She felt prepared for whatever the day might bring. Maya's resolution to approach Derek with compassion was tested sooner than she had anticipated. As she walked through the parking lot toward the school's entrance on Tuesday morning, she noticed a commotion near the flagpole. A small crowd of students had gathered in a loose circle, their voices carrying across the crisp morning air. As she drew closer, Maya's heart sank when she realized what was happening. Derek and his friends had cornered Marcus, the boy from her history class who had spoken so thoughtfully about nonviolent resistance the day before. Marcus was significantly smaller than Derek, and his expression showed a mixture of fear and defiance that Maya recognized all too well. "I told you yesterday that your little speech in Rodriguez's class was out of line," Derek was saying, his voice loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear clearly. "Nobody wants to hear lectures about civil rights from someone like you." Marcus straightened his shoulders, though Maya could see his hands trembling slightly. "It wasn't a lecture. Mrs. Rodriguez asked a question, and I answered it. That's what we're supposed to do in class." Derek stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over the smaller boy. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Coming into our school and acting like you know everything about history. Well, let me teach you some history, boy." The word boy was delivered with unmistakable venom, and Maya felt a flash of anger surge through her chest. She recognized the loaded nature of that particular insult, the way it was designed to diminish and dehumanize. Her grandfather had told her stories about his own experiences with such language, and she understood the deeper implications of what Derek was really saying. Maya found herself moving forward before she had consciously decided to intervene. Her training had taught her to assess situations quickly and thoroughly, and what she observed troubled her greatly. Derek's body language showed clear intent to escalate to physical violence. His friends were positioned to prevent Marcus from escaping easily. Most concerning of all, the watching students seemed frozen by uncertainty, unwilling to get involved, but equally unwilling to walk away. "Marcus," Maya called out in a clear, calm voice. "Mrs. Rodriguez wants to see us both before first period. She said it was about the history project we're working on together." It was a complete fabrication, but Maya delivered it with such confidence that even she almost believed it for a moment. Marcus looked at her with confusion and gratitude, clearly understanding that she was offering him an escape route. Derek whirled around to face Maya, his expression darkening when he recognized her. "Nobody asked you, Kung Fu girl. This doesn't concern you." "You're right, it doesn't concern me," Maya agreed easily. "But Marcus and I do have that meeting with Mrs. Rodriguez, so we really should get going." She walked over to Marcus and gently touched his elbow, guiding him toward the school entrance. Her movements were casual and non-threatening. But Derek seemed to sense something in her posture that made him hesitate. "We're not finished here," Derek said, though his voice lacked some of its earlier conviction. "Actually, you are finished," Maya replied, still moving slowly but steadily toward the building. "The first bell is going to ring in about 3 minutes. And you know how Mr. Patterson feels about students being late to homeroom." Derek's homeroom teacher was notorious for giving detention to anyone who arrived even seconds after the bell. And Maya's observation broke some of the tension that had been building in the crowd. Several students began moving toward their own entrances, suddenly aware of the time. As Maya and Marcus reached the safety of the school building, Marcus turned to her with deep appreciation in his eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up." "You were handling yourself well," Maya said honestly. "You didn't let him intimidate you, and you kept your dignity. That takes real courage." Marcus shook his head. "I was scared out of my mind. Derek's been giving me trouble ever since I transferred here last month. I think he sees me as an easy target, because I'm new, and I don't have many friends yet." Maya felt a pang of recognition. Being the new student is never easy. People sometimes see it as a sign of weakness, when really, it takes strength to start over in a new place. "You sound like you know from experience," Marcus observed. "I'm new here too. Remember? Just started 3 weeks ago." Maya shifted her backpack to her other shoulder. As they walked down the hallway together, "Maybe we can figure out this whole new school thing together." Marcus smiled for the first time since she had encountered him in the parking lot. "I'd like that. And who knows? Maybe Mrs. Rodriguez really will want us to work on a history project together." "That's not a bad idea," Maya said. "I was thinking about researching the role of martial arts in the civil rights movement. A lot of activists studied various forms of self-defense, but they had to balance physical preparedness with their commitment to nonviolence." "That sounds fascinating," Marcus said enthusiastically. "I'd love to work on something like that with you." As they parted ways to head to their respective homerooms, Maya felt a sense of satisfaction. She had managed to defuse a potentially violent situation without resorting to any of her martial arts training. Her grandfather would be proud of her for finding a non-violent solution. However, her satisfaction was short-lived. During her second period English class, Maya noticed Derek and his friends whispering urgently among themselves. Occasionally, one of them would glance in her direction, their expressions suggesting that she was the subject of their discussion. After class, as Maya gathered her books and prepared to leave, Jake approached her desk. Unlike Derek, Jake had always been more of a follower than a leader, and his demeanor seemed less overtly hostile. "Derek wants to talk to you," he said in a low voice. "After school today. He'll be waiting by the old tennis courts behind the gym." Maya looked up at him calmly. "What does he want to talk about?" Jake shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know. He just said to tell you to be there if you knew what was good for you." "And if I choose not to be there?" Maya asked. "Then he'll make things really bad for your friend Marcus," Jake said, then quickly added, "Look, I'm just delivering the message, okay? I don't want any trouble." Maya studied his face carefully. Jake seemed genuinely uncomfortable with whatever Derek was planning, which suggested that it was more serious than their previous encounters. "Tell Derek I'll be there," Maya said finally. "But also, Tell him that if anything happens to Marcus between now and then, our conversation will be very different from what he's expecting." Jake nodded quickly and hurried away, clearly eager to distance himself from the situation. Maya watched him go, her mind already beginning to formulate plans for the afternoon confrontation. During lunch, Maya found Jessica and Marcus sitting together at a table near the windows. She joined them, grateful to have found genuine friendships in what could have been a very isolating environment. "You look worried about something," Jessica observed. Maya debated how much to share. She didn't want to involve her new friends in her conflict with Derek, but she also felt they deserved to know what was happening, especially since Marcus was already a target. "Derek wants to meet with me after school," she said carefully. "I think he's planning to escalate things beyond just words." Marcus immediately looked guilty. "This is because of what happened this morning, isn't it?" "Because you helped me?" "You didn't ask me to help," Maya pointed out. "I chose to get involved because it was the right thing to do. Whatever Derek is planning now is his choice, not yours." Jessica leaned forward with concern. "Maya, you can't seriously be thinking of meeting with him. Derek's not just mean, he's dangerous. Last year, he put a kid in the hospital." This was news to Maya, and it significantly changed her assessment of the situation. "What happened?" "Some sophomore said something Derek didn't like," Jessica explained. "Derek cornered him after school and beat him up pretty badly. The kid had a concussion and needed stitches. Derek got suspended for a week, but his dad hired some expensive lawyer, and somehow Derek avoided getting expelled or facing any real consequences." Maya absorbed this information silently. The stakes were clearly higher than she had realized. Derek wasn't just a bully who relied on intimidation. He was willing and able to cause serious physical harm. "You should tell a teacher," Marcus said, "or the principal. They need to know that Derek is making threats." Maya shook her head. "Without witnesses or evidence, it would just be my word against his. And from what Jessica just told me, it sounds like Derek has ways of avoiding consequences even when there is evidence." "So what are you going to do?" Jessica asked. Maya was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Master Chen's teachings and her grandfather's stories. Both men had faced situations where avoiding conflict altogether wasn't possible, where standing up for what was right required accepting certain risks. "I'm going to meet with him," she said finally. "But I'm going to be very careful about how I handle it." Jessica and Marcus exchanged worried glances. "Maya, this is crazy," Jessica said. "Derek outweighs you by at least 50 pounds, and he'll probably have his friends with him." "I know it seems risky," Maya acknowledged. "But if I don't face this now, it's only going to get worse. Derek will keep escalating until someone gets seriously hurt. And I have the training to make sure that someone isn't me or anyone else." "Training?" Marcus asked. "You mean the martial arts thing you mentioned?" Maya nodded. "I've been studying Shaolin Kung Fu for 8 years. My teacher has prepared me for situations like this, even though I never expected to need those skills." Jessica still looked skeptical. "Even if you can defend yourself, what about afterward? Derek's dad has connections all over town. He could make life very difficult for you and your family." This concern was more troubling to Maya than the prospect of physical confrontation. Her parents had worked hard to build their life in this community, and she didn't want her actions to jeopardize their stability or happiness. "I'll have to be very careful to handle this in a way that doesn't give Derek's family any grounds to retaliate," Maya said. "My teacher always says that the best victory is one where your opponent doesn't realize they've lost." The rest of the day passed slowly. Maya found it difficult to concentrate on her classes, her mind constantly returning to the upcoming confrontation. She reviewed various scenarios in her head, trying to anticipate Derek's likely tactics and plan appropriate responses. In her final period mathematics class, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from Master Chen. "Remember, the goal is not to win, but to end the conflict with wisdom and compassion. True strength is shown through restraint, not force." Maya smiled despite her nervousness. Master Chen seemed to have an uncanny ability to provide exactly the guidance she needed at precisely the right moment. She typed back a quick response. "Thank you, Master. I will remember." When the final bell rang, Maya made her way to her locker to retrieve her things. The hallways were filled with the usual after-school chaos, as students headed to various activities or rushed to catch their buses home. Maya moved deliberately and calmly, using the familiar routine to center herself for what lay ahead. As she approached the old tennis courts behind the gymnasium, Maya could see Derek waiting for her, just as he had promised. He was alone, which surprised her. She had expected Jake and Tommy to be there as well. Derek was pacing back and forth across the cracked concrete surface of the abandoned court, his movements agitated and aggressive. When he saw Maya approaching, he stopped and turned to face her, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You actually came," he said, his voice carrying a mixture of surprise and satisfaction. "I wasn't sure if you had the guts." "You asked me to come," Maya replied simply. "What did you want to talk about?" "Talk?" Derek laughed harshly. "I don't want to talk to you. I want to teach you a lesson about minding your own business." Maya maintained her relaxed posture, though every sense was alert and focused. "What kind of lesson?" "What kind of lesson? The kind that leaves marks," Derek said, taking a step closer. "See, you embarrassed me yesterday, and then you embarrassed me again this morning with that Marcus kid. I can't let that slide, or everyone's going to think I'm going soft." "I wasn't trying to embarrass you," Maya said honestly. "I was just trying to help someone who needed it." "Well, your help wasn't wanted or needed," Derek snarled. "And now you're going to pay for sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." He lunged forward suddenly, his right fist aimed at Maya's face with surprising speed and power. But Maya had been watching his body language carefully, and she had seen the attack coming seconds before he launched it. She shifted slightly to her left, allowing Derek's momentum to carry him past her, while she gently redirected his arm with her open palm. Derek stumbled forward, off balance and confused by her minimal but effective response. "I don't want to fight you, Derek," Maya said calmly. "This doesn't have to become violent." Derek spun around, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You think you're some kind of ninja or something? Let me show you what real fighting looks like." He came at her again, this time with a wild haymaker that would have caused serious damage if it had connected. Maya stepped back just enough to let the punch miss her by inches, then moved forward to place her hand lightly on Derek's chest. To any observer, it would have looked like she was simply steadying him to prevent him from falling. But the pressure point technique she employed caused Derek's legs to suddenly feel weak and unsteady. He sat down hard on the concrete, more from surprise than from any pain. "What the hell did you just do to me?" Derek demanded, trying unsuccessfully to stand back up. "I helped you sit down before you hurt yourself," Maya said, maintaining her calm tone. "You were moving very aggressively, and I was worried you might trip and fall." Derek's legs felt like rubber, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't seem to coordinate his movements enough to regain his feet. "You did something to me. Some kind of pressure point thing." "I don't know what you mean," Maya said innocently. "Are you feeling all right? Maybe you should rest for a few minutes." Derek looked up at her with a mixture of frustration and grudging respect. Despite his size and strength advantages, he was completely helpless in his current position. Yet Maya showed no signs of gloating or taking advantage of his vulnerability. "Why aren't you finishing this?" he asked suspiciously. "You could probably beat me up right now and I couldn't stop you." Maya knelt down so that she was at eye level with him, her expression serious but not unkind. "Because beating you up wouldn't solve anything. You'd just be angrier and more determined to get revenge, and I'd become the kind of person I don't want to be." Derek stared at her, clearly struggling to understand her reasoning. "So what happens now? You just walk away and pretend this never happened?" "I walk away," Maya confirmed. "But first, I want to tell you something. I know about your parents' divorce." Derek's expression immediately hardened. "What about it?" "I know it must be really difficult," Maya said gently. "When the people who are supposed to provide stability in your life suddenly can't even get along with each other, it can make you feel like you have no control over anything." "You don't know anything about my life," Derek said, but his voice lacked its usual venom. "You're right. I don't know the details," Maya admitted. "But I know what it's like to feel powerless. And I know that sometimes, When we're hurting, we lash out at other people because it's easier than dealing with our own pain. Derek was quiet for a long moment, his earlier aggression seeming to deflate like a punctured balloon. "It's not just the divorce," he said finally. "Everything's falling apart. My dad moved out, and now he barely talks to me. My mom cries all the time. I feel like I'm losing my whole family." Maya felt a surge of compassion for this boy who had seemed so threatening just moments before. "I'm sorry you're going through that. It must be terrifying to watch your family break apart and not be able to do anything to stop it." "Yeah. Well, sympathy doesn't change anything," Derek said. But there was less hostility in his voice than before. "No, it doesn't," Maya agreed. "But maybe understanding can change something. If you can understand why you've been lashing out at people like Marcus and me, maybe you can find better ways to deal with your anger and fear." Derek was able to stand now, though he still seemed unsteady on his feet. "Why do you care what happens to me? I've been nothing but awful to you." Maya considered his question carefully. "Because I think underneath all that anger and aggression, you're probably a decent person who's just going through a really hard time. And because treating you with kindness costs me nothing, but it might make both of our lives a little bit better." Derek looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're really weird. You know that?" Maya smiled. "Yeah, I've heard that before." Derek began walking toward the school building, then stopped and turned back. "Maya, that thing you did to me, how long will my legs feel like this?" "Another few minutes," Maya said. "You'll be fine to drive home." Derek nodded and continued walking. Maya watched him go, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. The confrontation hadn't ended the way either of them had expected, and she wasn't sure what the long-term consequences would be. As she gathered her own belongings and prepared to leave, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Are you okay? Marcus and I have been worried sick." Maya typed back. "I'm fine. Everything worked out better than expected. I'll tell you about it tomorrow." On the bus ride to Master Chen's school, Maya reflected on what had happened. She had successfully defended herself without causing any real harm to Derek. But more importantly, she felt like she had gained some insight into the root causes of his aggressive behavior. Master Chen was waiting for her in the meditation room when she arrived, his usual serene expression tinged with what might have been mild concern. "You have had an eventful day," he observed as Maya settled onto the mat across from him. Maya described the confrontation in detail, including her decision to use the pressure point technique and her subsequent conversation with Derek about his family situation. "You showed both skill and wisdom," Master Chen said when she finished. "You used only the force necessary to protect yourself, and you attempted to address the underlying causes of the conflict, rather than simply its symptoms." "But did I do the right thing?" Maya asked. "Part of me wonders if I should have just walked away and let the teachers handle it." "What do you think would have happened if you had not met with him today?" Master Chen asked. Maya considered this. "He probably would have taken his anger out on Marcus or some other student who couldn't defend themselves as well as I can." "So your actions may have prevented harm to others," Master Chen pointed out. "This is consistent with our principles." "But what about Derek?" "I feel like I've only treated the symptoms of his problem, not the actual cause." Master Chen smiled slightly. "You cannot solve everyone's problems, Maya. But by showing compassion to someone who expected only hostility, you may have planted a seed that will grow in ways you cannot predict." They spent the rest of their session working on advanced forms, the flowing movements helping Maya process the emotional residue of her afternoon confrontation. As always, the physical practice served to restore her mental and spiritual equilibrium. Walking to the bus stop after training, Maya felt a sense of cautious optimism. The situation with Derek was far from resolved, but perhaps they had found a path forward that didn't require continued hostility. Her phone buzzed with another text, this one from an unknown number. "This is Derek. Thanks for not making this worse than it had to be. I still don't understand you, but I respect what you did today." Maya stared at the message for several moments before typing back. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, especially when they're going through difficult times. Take care of yourself, Derek. As the bus pulled up to the stop, Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had faced a significant challenge and handled it in a way that honored both her training and her values. Whatever complications tomorrow might bring, she was confident in her ability to meet them with wisdom and compassion. The weeks following Maya's confrontation with Derek brought unexpected changes to the social dynamics at Lincoln High School. Derek's behavior toward other students became noticeably less aggressive, though he remained distant and somewhat moody. He no longer sought out opportunities to intimidate newer or smaller students, and his friends, Jake and Tommy, seemed uncertain about their roles in his absence of leadership. Maya continued to observe these changes with cautious interest while building stronger friendships with Jessica and Marcus. The three of them had indeed begun working on their civil rights history project, researching the intersection of martial arts training and nonviolent resistance movements. Their collaboration had attracted the attention of Mrs. Rodriguez, who praised their innovative approach to the assignment. "What I find particularly fascinating," Marcus said during one of their library research sessions, "is how many civil rights leaders studied some form of martial arts, but they kept it quiet because it seemed to contradict their public commitment to nonviolence." Jessica looked up from the biographical article she was reading. "It makes sense when you think about it, though. Learning to defend yourself doesn't mean you're planning to start fights. It just means you're prepared if someone else starts one." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "My teacher says that true martial arts training actually makes you less likely to get into physical confrontations, not more likely. When you're confident in your abilities, you don't feel the need to prove anything to anyone." "Is that why you were able to stay so calm with Derek?" Marcus asked, "even when he was being really threatening?" "Partly," Maya said. "But it was also because I could see that he was hurting. Angry people aren't usually angry for no reason. They're usually scared, or sad, or feeling powerless about something else in their lives." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Derek himself, who approached their table with obvious hesitation. Maya noticed that he looked tired and somewhat thinner than she remembered, as if the stress of his family situation was taking a physical toll. "Hey," he said quietly, addressing Maya specifically. "Could I talk to you for a minute?" "Privately?" Jessica and Marcus exchanged glances, clearly protective of Maya and uncertain about Derek's intentions. Maya gave them a reassuring look before standing up. "Sure," she said. "What's on your mind?" Derek led her to a quiet corner of the library, far enough away from other students that they could speak without being overheard. When they stopped, he seemed to struggle with how to begin. "I wanted to thank you for what you said the other day," he said finally. "About my parents and everything. Nobody else even bothered to ask why I've been such a jerk lately." "How are things at home?" Maya asked gently. Derek's expression darkened. "Worse. My dad filed for divorce officially last week, and now my parents are fighting over everything. The house, the cars, even who gets custody of me. It's like I'm just another piece of property they have to divide up." Maya felt a surge of sympathy for him. "That must be incredibly painful. You're not property, Derek. You're a person with your own thoughts and feelings, and you deserve to be treated that way." "Yeah, well, try telling that to their lawyers," Derek said bitterly. "But that's not why I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to ask you something." Maya waited for him to continue. "That martial arts stuff you do," Derek said, "do you think, would it be possible for someone like me to learn it? Not to fight people," he added quickly, "but for the other stuff you mentioned, the discipline and control and all that." Maya was surprised by the request, but she could see the genuine desire for change in Derek's eyes. "I think anyone can learn martial arts, if they're willing to put in the work and approach it with the right attitude. But it's not easy, and it requires a lot of patience." "I need something," Derek said desperately. "I feel like I'm losing control of everything in my life, and I don't know how to handle it without hurting people or breaking things. The way you stayed calm when I was being awful to you. I want to be able to do that." Maya considered his request carefully. Master Chen had always taught her that martial arts should be shared with anyone who approached them with sincere intentions, regardless of their past mistakes. But she also knew that Derek would need to prove his commitment through actions, not just words. "I train at a school across town," Maya said. "Master Chen is very wise, but he's also very demanding. He doesn't tolerate students who aren't completely committed to learning. Would you ask him if he'd be willing to meet with me? Derek asked. I know I don't deserve any favors from you, but I'm asking anyway. Maya studied his face, looking for any signs of deception or hidden agenda. What she saw instead was a young man who was genuinely struggling and desperately seeking a path forward. I'll talk to him, she said finally. But Derek, you need to understand that martial arts isn't a quick fix for everything that's wrong in your life. It's a lifelong journey, and some days will be harder than others. I get that, Derek said. I just need somewhere to start. When Maya arrived at Master Chen's school that afternoon, she found him tending to his small garden behind the building. The late autumn air was crisp, and most of the plants were beginning their transition into winter dormancy. Master Chen, Maya said after completing her usual bow of greeting, I wanted to ask your advice about something. You wish to know if I will teach the young man who has been causing you difficulties, Master Chen said without looking up from the chrysanthemum plant he was carefully pruning. Maya shouldn't have been surprised by his intuitive understanding of her situation. Master Chen seemed to have an uncanny ability to perceive things that others missed. How did you know? She asked. Your body language tells me that you have encountered this student again, but this time, the encounter was different. You are no longer carrying the tension of unresolved conflict, but you are carrying the weight of a difficult decision. Maya described her conversation with Derek in detail, including his request to begin martial arts training. Master Chen listened without interruption, occasionally nodding as she spoke. What is your assessment of his sincerity? Master Chen asked when she finished. I think he's genuinely desperate for change, Maya said. His home life is falling apart, and I think he's beginning to understand that his anger isn't helping anything. But I also think he's looking for a magic solution to all his problems. And you know there is no magic solution, Master Chen observed. Right. Martial arts training might help him develop better self-control and emotional regulation, but it won't fix his parents' marriage or make his family problems go away. Master Chen finished pruning the chrysanthemum and moved on to a small pine tree that needed careful shaping. Tell me, Maya, what do you think would happen if I refused to meet with this young man? Maya considered the question. He might look for other ways to cope with his problems. Some of them might be destructive. And if I agree to meet with him but he proves to be insincere or uncommitted, then you would dismiss him, and he would learn that there are consequences for not taking things seriously. But if he proves to be genuinely committed to change, then maybe he becomes a better person, and the whole school becomes a safer place for everyone. Master Chen smiled slightly. You have learned to think beyond the immediate situation to consider longer-term consequences. This shows wisdom. So you'll meet with him? Maya asked. I will meet with him once, Master Chen said. But you must understand that his training, if he begins it, will be separate from yours. You cannot be responsible for his success or failure. Maya nodded, understanding the importance of maintaining boundaries even when trying to help someone. 2 days later, Derek arrived at Master Chen's school for his introductory meeting. Maya had agreed to accompany him for moral support, but she waited in the small reception area while Derek met privately with Master Chen. The meeting lasted over an hour, much longer than Maya had expected. When Derek finally emerged from Master Chen's office, his expression was thoughtful but determined. Well? Maya asked. How did it go? He's going to let me start classes, Derek said. But he made it clear that he has very high standards. He said if I miss more than 2 sessions without a legitimate excuse, or if I show up with the wrong attitude even once, I'm out permanently. Master Chen doesn't believe in second chances, Maya agreed. But if you stick with it and approach it seriously, you'll learn things about yourself that you never imagined. Derek's training began the following week. Maya was curious about his progress, but she made a conscious effort not to ask Master Chen for updates. Derek's journey had to be his own, without interference from her. However, she did notice changes in his behavior at school almost immediately. Derek began arriving earlier in the mornings and staying later in the afternoons, using the time for extra studying rather than socializing with his old crowd. Jake and Tommy seemed confused by their friend's new priorities, and their group dynamic began to shift noticeably. Maya also observed that Derek was making an effort to repair some of the relationships he had damaged with his previous behavior. She watched him apologize to Marcus one day after history class, a conversation that seemed to surprise both boys but ended with what appeared to be mutual understanding. "Derek talked to me today," Marcus told Maya during lunch. "He said he was sorry for giving me such a hard time, and that he hoped we could start over." How do you feel about that?" Maya asked. "Honestly, suspicious," Marcus admitted. "But also, hopeful. People can change, right? I mean, look at you. A month ago, I was getting picked on constantly. And now I have real friends, and I'm working on this amazing history project. Things can get better." Jessica nodded in agreement. "I think we should give Derek a chance to prove that he's really changing. But we should also be careful and not naive about it." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the cafeteria entrance. A group of seniors had surrounded a young freshman girl, and their body language suggested trouble. Maya recognized the girl as Emma, a quiet student who had transferred to Lincoln High just 2 weeks earlier. One of the seniors, a tall boy named Brad, whom Maya knew by reputation as one of Derek's former associates, was holding Emma's backpack above her head while she jumped unsuccessfully to reach it. "Come on, little girl," Brad was saying in a mocking voice. "If you want your bag back, all you have to do is say, 'Please, Master Brad, may I have my backpack?'" Emma's face was flushed with embarrassment and frustration, but she seemed too intimidated to respond with anything more than continued attempts to retrieve her belongings. Maya stood up from her table, her sense of justice overriding any concerns about getting involved in another conflict. But before she could take a step, Derek appeared seemingly from nowhere and positioned himself between Brad and Emma. "That's enough, Brad," Derek said firmly. "Give her the bag back." Brad looked surprised by Derek's intervention. "What's wrong with you, man? We're just having some fun with the new kid." "No, you're being a bully," Derek said calmly. "And that's not okay." Maya watched the interaction with fascination. Derek's posture was confident but not aggressive. His voice was steady and clear, and his overall demeanor reminded her strongly of Master Chen's teachings about projecting strength without threatening violence. Brad's expression hardened. "Who are you to tell me what's okay? You've been acting weird all month, Derek. Maybe you need a reminder about whose side you're supposed to be on." Derek didn't flinch or step back. "I'm on the side of not picking on people who can't defend themselves. Emma hasn't done anything to you, so leave her alone." The tension in the cafeteria was palpable. Other students had stopped their conversations to watch the confrontation, and Maya could see several teachers beginning to move in their direction. Brad made the mistake of trying to push Derek aside to continue tormenting Emma. Derek smoothly stepped aside, allowing Brad's momentum to carry him forward while simultaneously placing a gentle hand on his shoulder that somehow caused Brad to stumble and nearly fall. "Whoa, careful there," Derek said, steadying Brad as if he were genuinely concerned for his welfare. "You almost tripped," Maya smiled to herself, recognizing the technique Derek had just used. It was a basic redirection that Master Chen taught to all beginning students, but Derek had executed it perfectly and with just the right amount of subtle precision. Brad looked confused and frustrated, unsure of exactly what had happened but aware that he had somehow lost control of the situation. He dropped Emma's backpack and stalked away, muttering under his breath about Derek's betrayal. Derek picked up the backpack and handed it to Emma with a gentle smile. "Sorry about that," he said. "Brad's been having a tough semester. Are you okay?" Emma nodded, clutching her backpack gratefully. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I didn't know what to do." "You don't have to put up with that kind of treatment from anyone," Derek said. "If someone gives you trouble again, find a teacher or come talk to me. Nobody should have to deal with bullies alone." As Derek walked past Maya's table, he caught her eye for just a moment. There was a question in his expression, as if he were asking for her assessment of how he had handled the situation. Maya gave him a small, approving nod. Derek's face lit up with what she could only describe as pure joy. and she realized that earning her respect had become important to him. Later that afternoon, as Maya prepared for her own training session, she reflected on how dramatically things had changed since her first day at Lincoln High School. What had begun as a simple bullying incident had evolved into something much more complex and meaningful. Her phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Thank you for giving me a chance to be better. I know I still have a long way to go, but today felt like progress." Maya typed back, "You stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for herself. That's what real strength looks like." When Maya arrived at Master Chen's school, she found Derek finishing his own training session. He was working on basic forms, his movements still awkward and unpolished, but showing genuine effort and concentration. "How is he progressing?" Maya asked Master Chen as they watched Derek practice. "He is learning that true martial arts require more patience than he initially possessed," Master Chen said. "But he is also learning that this patience is worth developing. His anger is beginning to transform into determination." Derek completed his form and bowed respectfully to Master Chen before gathering his things to leave. As he passed Maya, he paused. "I wanted you to know that I talked to my parents last night," he said. "I told them how their fighting was affecting me and asked them to consider family counseling. They agreed to try it." "That took a lot of courage," Maya said. "How do you feel about it?" "Terrified," Derek admitted, "but also hopeful. Maybe we can't save their marriage, but maybe we can learn to be a family again in a different way." After Derek left, Maya began her own training session with a sense of deep satisfaction. She had managed to transform a potential enemy into someone who was actively working to become a better person. More importantly, she had demonstrated to herself that Master Chen's teachings about compassion and understanding weren't just philosophical concepts, but practical tools for creating positive change in the world. "You have learned an important lesson," Master Chen observed as they worked together on advanced techniques. "You have discovered that the greatest victory is not defeating your opponent, but helping them defeat the worst parts of themselves." Maya smiled as she moved through a complex form, her body and mind working in perfect harmony. "I'm beginning to understand that martial arts aren't really about fighting at all." "What are they about?" Master Chen asked. "They're about connection," Maya said. "Connection to yourself, connection to others, and connection to the principles that make life meaningful." Master Chen nodded approvingly. "Now, you are ready to begin your real training." Months later, as the school year drew to a close, Maya looked back on her time at Lincoln High with gratitude and amazement. She had not only found her place in a new school, but had also discovered new depths of strength and wisdom within herself. Derek had become one of Master Chen's most dedicated students, and had even begun helping with classes for younger children. His parents had indeed begun counseling. And while their marriage couldn't be saved, they had learned to co-parent more effectively and with less hostility. Marcus had blossomed into a confident student leader and was planning to run for student government the following year. Jessica had become Maya's closest friend, and their bond had been strengthened by shared experiences of standing up for others and supporting each other through challenges. But perhaps most importantly, Maya had learned that the true test of martial arts training wasn't in physical confrontation, but in the daily choice to respond to conflict with wisdom rather than anger, understanding rather than judgment, and compassion rather than hostility. As she walked across the stage at the year-end awards ceremony to receive recognition for her academic achievements and community service, Maya caught sight of Master Chen in the audience. He gave her the slightest nod of approval, and she knew that her real education had only just begun. The journey from victim to victor to teacher had taught Maya that the greatest strength lay not in dominating others, but in empowering them to become the best versions of themselves. And in a world that often seemed defined by conflict and division, that lesson was perhaps the most valuable gift she could have received.